And I've seen this with many people on TikTok, like these people that, and in my personal life, but I've seen it greatly on TikTok. Many people who you can tell that at some point they were truly following Christ. There was something in their videos or in something that they did that you could tell that they were reaching and drawing near to Christ, but they chose to accept those demonic thoughts and they rejected him. They rebelled, and now they still believe they're within Christ, but instead they're under a witchcraft spirit manipulating the word. And the person I'm going to mention is Mandy Ralph. So, for in my friend group, she's very well known. She's a false prophetess here on TikTok that has everyone can tell now that she's far deep into witchcraft and adultery and everything, right? But she didn't start off that way. She just started off as a baby Christian. Over the summer, God sent a few friends and I to go correct her, in which she necessarily wasn't taking the correction, but it brought a lot of people out of her deception. And at some point, I was ready. I was like, okay, well, the Bible says we correct him once, twice, and then we're done. And we don't go any further because they have self-condemned themselves, right? Well, God pushed me a little bit further. He goes, no, go look at her videos. And so I scrolled all the way back to the beginning of her videos. Her very first videos were her singing. She had written some songs, was trying to take off in a music career. But there's two videos. Her first two videos that were actually about God, they were truth. And God was warning her of the deception to come. Like the very verses that she refuses to believe now are the ones that God used, and she believed them back then. I don't know at what point she chose to start believing the lies, but if you go, I think she still has them, and it's testimonies of her dream back in 2014. And oh, well, thank you for flagging me for harassment, but it's not harassment or bullying. So, anyways, she had done well at believing God in these verses. Some point she chose to believe those deceptions, and people kept coming in to correct her, like lovingly correct her biblically. And she kept rejecting them, and kept going further into this belief that God was telling her when the rapture was going to be and twisting the truth of the Bible, right? Well, it got to I decided to, or sorry, I shouldn't say I decided, but when he showed me that, I realized that God was trying to bring her back to that truth. And so I stitched the video and I told her, I'm like, Mandy, come back to this truth that God originally told you. Everyone is trying to get you to come back. Remember, God told you this. And she actually messaged me and she said, that wasn't Jesus. I have Jesus now. That wasn't Jesus. And I'm like, well, that lined up biblically. What you're doing now didn't. The next morning, God woke me up and told me immediately to go to Romans 1. And, you know, he basically told me he had handed her over to a reprobate mind. Reprobate means worthless. And it's because there's certain standards in Romans 1 before he hands them over to a reprobate mind that these people did. And she at least checked off 3 of them that I could see. She had turned the truth of God into a lie. She had forgotten the knowledge of God that God had given her. She had chosen to forget it. She was twisting and turning God's lies. And she made God into the image of a man by basically calling him a liar. God's not a liar. And so therefore she rejected the last chance for her to come back into truth by getting reminded of the truth that God did give her, and she rejected it. And so she's been handed over to a reprobate mind. After she got handed over to that, everyone could very clearly see how she just went off into this very obvious witchcraft. Now she has these 12 disciples. She's left her husband and committed adultery with this other man. She's doing very wicked things, publicly claiming that Jesus is telling her to do it. And we obviously know that's not the right spirit. She has been given over to a worthless mind. There's a parable in the Bible where it talks about how the worthless servant was thrown into hell. So at some point, that servant was an actual servant of Christ, and they became worthless and they got thrown into hell. That's where Mandy's going. She had hardened her heart to the point where she can't be corrected any longer. She doesn't hear God's voice any longer, right? And that is happening to many right now. So we have the division of the wheat and tares. And many people right now are teaching that that's going to happen at the judgment throne. That's when people are going to be separated. But that's not true. I've been seeing it since 2020. There was a major spiritual shift in 2020. Okay. So there was a major spiritual shift in 2020 that happened. Major. Like, I truly believe. Okay, so the things that are in Revelation that talk about a beast coming up out of the waters, most of it, Ephesians 6:12 tells us that we don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but with principalities and rulers of darkness, right? So we're dealing with demons. We're dealing with things that we can't discern or see. So, and I really feel like one of those beasts came up because of the major deception that just started happening in 2020, the major division. People started walking away from their faith. There was like people's love lacked even further. Like, it was terrible. I can't go in and explain it all. But in that, I started seeing people's hearts being revealed. Were you truly of God or not to begin with? Because it shows that many people claim God, but there's an error in their heart that shows that they were never of God to begin with, or they were of God and they chose to walk away following those doctrines. There's two different things. And I'm sorry, give me a second. I lost where I was going with this. Yes, people claim, going back to the beginning of this, yes, people claim that they were never of the faith to begin with. And yes, there were antichrists that it says that they were never of us to begin with. But when they were never of us to begin with, they didn't bear fruit. We have to bear fruit as Christ, as disciples of Christ. So we can see that they didn't bear fruit. It's obvious that they weren't of us. But there are people who did bear fruit and chose to rebel.